What's up guys, my name's Timbo and today I'm going to break down the entire story and ending to Resident Evil Village. The twists, the turns, the post-credits scene, and everything else in between. Cause I'm just such a nice guy who occasionally rhymes, albeit unintentionally. On the surface, this story appears very simplistic. We have about the third or fourth entry in the World's Best Dad Gaming Olympics, seeing protagonist Ethan fend off Lycans, puppets, and thick vampire women alike in an attempt to save his daughter and not get outshined by the much more interesting Chris Redfield. But as time goes on, I will admit this plot gets pretty confusing. I was going to say confusing. As always, these videos are not meant to be reviews, but for what it's worth, I really enjoyed this game. Replacing the sheer southern horror from Resident Evil 7 is much more action and theme park thrill, with a hint of PT sprinkled in there. And while that intentional design choice might not be for everyone, I certainly didn't mind it. I found the story to be engaging all the way through, even though it definitely repeats the same outline for Resident Evil 7. The gunplay felt improved and the presentation, the graphics, the sound, everything was top-notch on PS5. By the end of this video, I really hope you have a good grasp of what happened in Resident Evil Village, how it all connected to Resident Evil 7, and what it means for Resident Evil 9. I will admit, the hiding Roman numerals in the title thing is cool, but I have no idea how they're going to do that with a 9. Just pointing that out there. While this video will cover the entirety of the game, this is not meant to replace the experience you'll get playing Resident Evil Village yourself. This video is mainly geared towards people who are maybe too afraid to play the game, in this instance, don't want to spend the money, or have played it and were left confused. And just as a final disclaimer before we get started, this explanation assumes you're familiar with the events that took place in Resident Evil 7. So if you're totally unaware of everything that happened in that game, I highly encourage you to familiarize yourself with that information before continuing in this video, because if you don't, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. With all that out of the way, grab some popcorn and your favorite wimpy friend who wouldn't play this game if you paid them $1 million, because we're about to get started. Taking place 3 years after the events of the previous game, Resident Evil Village begins with Mia reading a bedtime story to her and Ethan's infant daughter, Rose. The creepy Deathly Hallows-esque story isn't super important, but the events in it parallel the events that will unfold in this game. Having moved to Europe under the protection of Chris Redfield, Mia and Ethan hope to start a new, safer life with fewer rednecks. This unfortunately isn't the case, because if it were, we'd have no game. After Ethan puts Rose to bed, he heads downstairs to have dinner with Mia. While Mia pours Ethan a glass of wine, which happens to be the same brand distributed in Castle Dimitrescu, this happens.
Well, at least we're all together. You, me, Rose. Now, everything's gonna
Seriously? Think we can just forget about what happened in Louisiana?
It happened so long ago. I don't understand why you are so...
Mia, get down! Mia! Chris? What the hell?
Sorry, Ethan.
No! What? Why?
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
With Mia dead, Chris leads Ethan and Rose out of their home for unknown reasons at this time. Sometime later, Ethan wakes up next to a crashed transport truck with the nearby guards dead. After heading through the forest for a little while, Ethan eventually stumbles upon, well, a village highlighted by a castle to flesh out this striking vista. The skybox is rendered and compressed for you, but man did it look good for me. Ethan soon finds an old man with a shotgun who frantically hands Ethan a weapon before getting sucked up into the ceiling. This event sparks Ethan's first encounter with Lycans, powerful beasts that are terrorizing the village. Ethan manages to overcome the Lycans, but not before one of them takes a few of his fingers with it. Because this wouldn't be a first-person Resident Evil game if Ethan didn't lose a few appendages along the way. After escaping what was looking to be his demise, Ethan comes across a weird old woman with a cackling skull stick thing who tells Ethan that Rose is in danger. Looking for a way forward, Ethan finds two villagers, a girl named Elena and her wounded father. He manages to bring them into a woman named Louise's home, but unbeknownst to them, Elena's father is about to go full Lycan on them, and no one is liking that. Sorry. Before Ethan knows it, Louise's house is engulfed in flames, leaving him as the only survivor.
Why is everyone dying on me?
Making his way into the castle, Ethan's progress is halted again by a man with a big hammer and telekinesis-like abilities named Heisenberg. Heisenberg captures Ethan and brings him to the village priest, Mother Miranda, along with her lords, whose names, dear God help me, are all difficult to pronounce. We just met Carl Heisenberg. You've probably also heard of the big lady Dimitrescu, but there's also the doll-wielding Donna Beneviento and a fishman Salvatore Moreau. It's Italian. In an attempt to kill him, Heisenberg sets the Lycans on Ethan, only for him to escape and continue into Castle Dimitrescu. Inside the castle, Ethan is taken by Lady D's 3 daughters.
Starting to go a little stale.
Then let's devour his man-flesh quickly, Mother.
I am the one who captured him.
Now, daughters. First, I must inform Mother Miranda. But later, well, there will be enough for everyone.
Despite being hung by his palms, Ethan manages to escape again. Inside the castle, Ethan is stalked by Lady D and her 3 daughters, traversing through dusty attics, creepy dungeons, and even wine-covered cellars. At least I hope it's wine. But with the help of the always conveniently placed Duke, Ethan manages to upgrade his weapons and take down the 3 daughters one by one. Despite the castle section only being one of 4 total boss areas, it was still a highlight of this game. Even though my expectations were probably skewed by the marketing, I still wish we got more of this. This is what I, as well as many other people, thought the entire game was going to be like. Tonally and thematically, Village is kind of all over the place, as you'll see later on. In a way, I kind of feel bad for the developers, because they probably marketed Lady D and the castle as a means of just showing off the beginning parts of the game, something that many developers do, having no idea everyone was going to freak out and respond in the way that they did. Still, walking around the castle and having no idea where Lady D is was truly terrifying. In this section, it's worth mentioning Ethan loses his hand again, but it's nothing some nice first aid juice can't fix. I would normally criticize something like this, but you'll see. After collecting 4 angel masks, Ethan heads through a door that leads to a coffin. The coffin has a dagger in it that can kill Lady Dimitrescu. When Ethan collects the dagger, Lady D attacks Ethan and transforms into a giant bat-like creature. After shooting her many times with a sniper rifle, Ethan kills Lady D once and for all, successfully escaping the castle.
Curse you!
On his way out, Ethan discovers a flask that contains the head of his daughter, Rose. Pretty weird. Also, Rose has a really big head. I don't really know if it would fit in there. He encounters this strange cackling lady again, who basically just tells him a riddle, and continues forward until he runs into the Duke again. The Duke informs Ethan that Mother Miranda separated Rose into 4 different flasks for a special ritual. To stop this from happening, Ethan now needs to confront the 3 remaining lords, kill them, and gather the flask Miranda entrusted them with. This is a very video gamey plot point, but I'm still okay with it. Ethan's first stop is Donna's beautiful house by a waterfall. Inside, during easily the scariest part of this game, Ethan begins seeing visions of Mia. This is made possible because of Donna's ability to make people hallucinate using the pollen from her plants. Most notably is Donna's ability to control the many dolls seen in her home, especially Angie, the doll Donna's late father built for her as a gift. Donna puts Ethan through a wild series of events, stripping him of his weapons, somehow causing him to solve her many puzzles. This part was extremely well done, but it was also super creepy, so we're just gonna move on. Remind me to never have kids.
You're not my dad!
Ethan eventually puts an end to Donna and her many creepy, hallucinogenic infused dolls. Next up is Moreau, a dude with some serious insecurity issues. And I mean serious. After turning into a giant fish, Ethan is forced to drain out the water from the area, hit him with some grenades, avoid his nasty acid rain, unsuccessfully in my case, and once again, defeat the bad guy and take another flask back for himself. During this time, Chris shows back up too, but he basically just looks cool and tells Ethan to stay out of his way. All that leaves Ethan with is Heisenberg, who tells Ethan through a television he'll give him the flask if he completes one of his tests. Even though this certainly sounds and looks like an awful idea, Ethan doesn't really have any choice if he wants to win that Best Video Game Dad Award. Kratos managed to kill entire Norse gods for this, so it's safe to say the order is quite tall. Okay, I'll stop. Heisenberg's test pretty much just results in having Ethan kill a bunch of Lycans, who are no match for me in this Magnum I found, a gun that does so much damage it's honestly not even fair.
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
With all the flasks collected, Ethan returns them to the ceremony site and is led to Heisenberg's giant factory filled with tons of mechanized zombie robot things. As I said, we've come a long way since the castle at this point. In the factory, Heisenberg tells Ethan about his plans to rebel against Miranda. While Ethan and Heisenberg both want Miranda dead, their means of achieving that feat differ. So Ethan says screw you to Heisenberg and escapes before an inevitable battle begins. After fighting a ton of zombie robots and a mini-boss that looks like it came right out of Bioshock, Ethan runs into Chris yet again. Finally, Chris comes to his senses and tells Ethan something he should have known all along, would have avoided pretty much probably the whole plot of this game, quite honestly. Chris tells Ethan that Mother Miranda has the ability to control her cells and transform herself to look like anything or anyone, referred to as mimicry. This means Miranda was posing as the old woman seen throughout the game, as well as Mia at the game's opening. It was actually Miranda in Ethan's house reading the bedtime story to Rose at the beginning of the game, having infiltrated the house with the means of kidnapping the baby. Chris tried to put an end to this by killing Miranda, but she escaped while in the transport truck, leaving Rose in Miranda's clutches and Ethan stranded in the village. Chris plans to rendezvous with Ethan shortly, leaving him with a makeshift tank of sorts, featuring a chainsaw. Gotta love the chainsaw. Ethan rides the tank up the elevator and is met by Heisenberg, who has literally turned into a Decepticon. Are you serious? Remember when we thought this game was about creepy castles and vampire ladies? Now Michael Bay's in the house. Either way, Ethan destroys Heisenberg once and for all and is met by Miranda, disguised as Mia once again. Miranda comes out of nowhere, reaches into Ethan, and something straight out of Indiana Jones rips his heart out. And with that, our protagonist is dead. Yikes. We then get this amazing sequence playing as Chris now, as he calls in a BSAA assault force team to help suppress Miranda's forces. Chris uses his straight awesome night vision and weaponry, which make this game like 4,000 times less frightening, to battle through an armada of Lycans before reaching the Megamycete, translated as fungal root or black god in the Japanese game, fun fact. It's this mold heart that helped the Connections create Evelyn and give Miranda her powers. As you would expect, Chris plants a bomb on the sucker with the intent of blowing it sky high. Moving ahead, Chris locates Miranda's lab. In the lab, Chris discovers that Miranda was the one who originally located the mold and began experimenting on it over a century ago, meaning the events of Resident Evil 7 are a result of the Megamycete located under the village being transported to other areas. In that case, through Evelyn. Over 100 years ago, the mold gave Miranda immortality. Since then, she's been trying to find a way to bring her daughter Eva back to life, having died from the Spanish flu. The main differentiation between her research and that of the Connections from the last game, who created Evelyn as a reminder, was that Miranda spliced the mold with parasitic nematodes, which in the game is supposed to explain why everyone looks weird and not just like a normal zombie mold creature, I guess. But in reality, it just made me think of this.
Oh, dang nematodes!
Miranda experimented on the villagers, infecting them with this parasite she created called Kudu, probably said that wrong, in an attempt to find a host body for her daughter. The individuals that had higher affinity to the Kudu are the 4 lords seen in this game. But for various reasons outlined in her writings, all 4 of them were still an unfit vessel for Eva, especially you, fish boy. There are a few other things found in Miranda's lab, most notably a connection with Umbrella and the creation of the T-virus, but they're pretty loose. Miranda used her connections with Well, the connections to discover that Rose would be the perfect host for Eva for reasons that will be explained later. Chris also finds the real Mia trapped in Miranda's lab, who explains to Chris that Ethan can't be dead. And dead he isn't, for some reason. Despite having no heart, Ethan rises to his feet and sees a vision of Evelyn. Evelyn informs Ethan that he's been dead for 3 years. It's revealed that Ethan was actually killed by Jack Baker in their very first encounter together, meaning that aside from the first 30 or so minutes from Resident Evil 7, we have been playing as a dead man this entire time. This explains all of the times that Ethan has been severely injured. In actuality, Ethan has managed to survive all these attacks because he's essentially a mold creature. Despite dying in the Dulvey estate years ago, Ethan's exposure to the mold revived him and granted him regenerative powers. This also explains why Rose is the perfect vessel for Eva, as she was born from Ethan and Mia, two people who were heavily exposed to and altered by the mold. I don't know if this was planned from the beginning or not, but this was an awesome twist. I tried to give the game the benefit of the doubt every time I saw Ethan get brutally injured because this is a video game, but making that into a plot point was a really creative move. Despite being dead, Ethan still needs to find his daughter, so he hitches a ride with the Duke and encounters Miranda at the ritual site. In the end, Ethan defeats Miranda once and for all and rescues Rose just as Chris shows up. Unfortunately, Ethan's regenerative powers start failing him, leaving him with no strength to return to safety with Chris. Instead of continuing on, Ethan leaves Rose with his jacket, opting to stay behind and detonate the bomb, destroying the Megamycete, the village, and oh, just kidding, the castle's fine. As Mia mourns the loss of Ethan, Chris discovers that the BSAA soldiers sent to the village were bioweapons themselves, causing Chris to order his squad to head to the BSAA's European headquarters, which is probably going to be DLC. The credits roll here, but we're still not done, as some unspecified amount of time later, we see a teenage Rose visiting Ethan's grave before being called away for a mission on behalf of an undisclosed organization. Before the camera fades to black, the car stops as an unknown figure approaches it. Ooh. While the post-credits scene is short, there's a decent amount to unpack here. We can assume the Black Suit organization involves Chris in some way, because Rose mentions his name. We just don't know who they are and what they're up to. This is going off of practically nothing, but the fact that they try to connect Miranda with the T-Virus probably tells me that they're trying to take these newer Resident Evil games and connect them with the older ones. It's possible this scene takes place, give or take 15 years after the events of Village, but it's also hard to know for sure because theoretically, Rose could age rapidly. She wouldn't be the first character that has done that. Since this is the internet, people manage to mod the game and discover that the figure out in the distance is the player model of Ethan. If you don't believe me, you can go look up the video IGN made on it. Either way, does this mean Ethan's alive? No. It wouldn't be unusual for a development studio to just reuse an already modeled, rigged, and animated character mesh, especially if that character's on screen for like 3 seconds and is put at a distance so far away you'd have to mod the game to see who it is. I wouldn't totally rule it out, but the game does end saying that the father's story is now done, which indicates to me that in Resident Evil 9 we will either be playing as Chris or Rose, but we'll just have to wait and see. But guys, that is the entirety of Resident Evil Village explained. There are a few things I excluded, but I want to keep this video relatively succinct and provide you with the most essential information to understand and move forward with. If you want to learn more about the characters, events, and the many science fiction bioweapon mumbo jumbo in this universe, I recommend you head over to the Resident Evil wiki and read to your heart's content. If there's anything else still confusing you, feel free to write it down in the comments and hopefully I or someone else will get back to you. If you guys found this video helpful, letting me know by leaving me a positive rating is greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.